Hello, thank you so much for joining me today. It's really wonderful to have you with me. I'm JJ, the Practical Alchemist, otherwise known as, and on Alternatively Speaking today, I am speaking with a rather special guest called Amy Ewbank. Now, Amy is somebody who works in the arts. She trained at LAMDA, the London Academy of Music and Dramatic Art, and she puts on plays, writes them, directs them, I think produces them. She knows a lot about the theatre, the arts, and also helping people break through from their mental health issues through art. Now, I don't know if you're aware, but today the National Health Service here in the UK has about 2 million people waiting for treatment for their mental health issues. So we have a bit of a crisis going on right now. And anything, I think, that we can do to help people move through any mental health issues that they have, the better. Now, I'm not saying that unleashing the creativity within is the only answer to mental health problems. However, for a lot of us, it can really help us get back on track in life. So Amy is here to tell us a little bit more about that. I'll put all of her details in the description below. And if you like this content, you want to see more of it, you know what to do. So, Amy, thank you so much for joining me today. I don't think it's any secret that we're in the middle of a mental health crisis nationally, internationally, maybe even, because people are talking about the numbers of people waiting here in the UK for help with their mental health problems. But art, and art in all its forms, can be a really great form of therapy, can't it? Maybe not replacing normal therapy, but to help us get stuff out there and just really let go of some of the emotions that we're holding in.
Absolutely. And, I think as someone who's been through a lot of therapy myself, I'm a great advocate for talking therapies. I think they're absolutely phenomenal in terms of processing some of your deeper emotions, feelings, barriers, blocks. They have such an important role to play in our self-development and growth mindset. But I will say that I think creativity can sometimes fall by the wayside because we're doing so much introspective work. When we were younger, a lot of us, when we were little kids, would engage in play, would engage in creating stories, would step into that other world very freely and very naturally. And now, of course, as grown-ups, although a lot of us don't really believe still that we are grown-ups deep down.
I don't, certainly. I'm still a child.
I know. It's a ridiculous notion, isn't it, to suddenly be a grown-up?
Yeah.
But the world of adulting is such, it's so exhausting that I think finding time and space to create something just feels like it's at the bottom of the pile. And actually what we do at PowerPlay is encourage people to find their stories, and not only find their stories and write their stories in the form of a play, in the form of theatre, but to have that story witnessed, which is really, really key. Now, it might be a personal story to them on the surface. So it might be a story which is literally about their life. But more often than not, it's something where gems of them, pieces of them, treasures of them are embedded into the story that they tell. So it might be a restoration comedy, or it might be something that's set, in a mythical time. But when we work with clients and writers, playwrights, actually what we find is that often, you will have a character in there who is perhaps reflection of their mother, or reflection of their brother, or something that they've been through in their life. And there's a real beauty to that, because it's not only the story itself. And of course, we're experts at crafting story and helping them to understand how that works on a piece by piece, scene by scene basis. But actually, it's about the deeper emotional connection that you can have through having a story witnessed. And I think, as you say, with so much mental health crises, it's at the bottom of the pile. You don't keep yourself accountable to that kind of thing. And that's what we do with PowerPlay. We really try to encourage people to not only write their plays, but keep writing them and get to this end point of having their play performed on stage.
I think that's a brilliant thing, because for a lot of people, they are dying to, get something out there that's creative, but they often will think, well, that's too much of a big hurdle for me. What do I know about that? So to be able to help people to get their stories out there is fantastic.
Yeah, thanks. I think, it's something I'm really proud of, and that we work really hard to make it. It's a kind of bucket list experience, in the sense that, if there are a lot of people that did art when they were younger. They might have gone to university and studied art, or, writing, or done creative writing on the side. And then, as I said, their life has taken a different direction for whatever reason. And they think that part of their life is over. And, we're really there to say it's not over. There's still a way to reconnect with that creative, playful part of yourself. And we can show you how, because it's not as simple as just saying, I'm going to write a play, going away and writing a play. Actually, it does take craft, and it does take work, and you do need to understand how to go about doing that. But as you say, the way to put a play on is often a barrier, because people will think, I don't know anything about the world of theatre. I don't know anything I love going to see the theatre, but I don't understand how to produce a play. I wouldn't know where to start. Where do I find my actors? Where do I find my director? And that's where we come in and say, we've got this. That's all the stuff we do. We'll support you to write your play, and then we'll get it on stage if you want, if that's one of our packages.
That is a huge thing. Really is a huge thing. And for people who, I think it's fantastic, but for people who maybe even think that is too much for them, what can you say that would help people who just want to express themselves but find that very difficult? They want to be creative, but maybe are thinking, well, putting on a play is a bit much, right? It's even so.
Yeah, so we have a number of packages that we offer people, but we also work on a bespoke basis with clients. So it might be that there's someone that actually just wants to write their first play ever. They don't necessarily want it performed. They want it for them. And actually, that's where we start with when we're working with people, is having a consultation to ask them, actually, where are you at, like in your life, in your creative life? So at the start of our packages, we start with a sort of silver service, which is working one-on-one with an individual to build their confidence. There's an element also of coaching, and I'm a qualified coach. And there's an element of, it isn't coaching per se, but invariably when you're working on someone's heart, which is really what a lot of writing is, their stuff comes up, and that's really natural. And, I would never say I'm a qualified therapist, but I do understand a lot of that world. And actually being able to say to someone, wait a second, this feels like this is a hard scene to talk about. Is there something going on here? Is there something that we need to think about? Maybe we don't touch that quite yet. Maybe you're not ready to go to that place. So, you can work with someone to actually get them to write the play that will lovingly sit on their coffee table, and it won't maybe be performed, but it will be something that they've created and that they've brought out of themselves. And then I think for people, the other side of that is, of course, you can work with someone like PowerPlay, and you can do that work, but equally for yourself, if you're not in a place where you're ready, to work with anyone, then start doing things like morning pages, which you may have heard of, an exercise which came out of the Artist's Way originally. But morning pages is a brilliant exercise where the first thing you do in the morning, you wake up, you have a notepad and pen. Don't even go for a wee. Like, you've got to just pick that up first thing in the morning. It's a bit harder when you've got care and responsibilities, but we managed to get through it somehow. You grab a paper and a pen, and you just write. And it's before that that ego has kicked in, where you're judging your writing, and you put pen to paper and you write and write and write. And if you can't think of anything to write, you just write the words, I am writing, I am writing, I am writing, I am writing. And actually what that does, even if you're writing, I hate this is awful, is slowly you set a timer for 20 minutes, some things will start to come out, and you'll start to reconnect with that creativity. So morning places are a really great place to start.
It's so true. It's so true. If you're looking at a blank page, just, I was always taught, if you're looking at a blank page, just write something. Just write something, and then the rest will follow. Isn't that really, really important, isn't it? But it's such a long time since I've heard anybody talk about the Artist's Way. Explain to people what the Artist's Way is.
So the Artist's Way is a book. I can't remember when it came out. Was it?
Ages ago. Yeah.
want to say 80s, but
Yeah,
maybe
maybe.
around that.
Yeah.
And it's a book which is basically sort of working you through different exercises and ways of thinking. There's quite a spiritual element in there as well, which you can kind of take or leave. You don't necessarily have to, and it does say that at the beginning of the book, actually. And it works you through different exercises to reconnect with your creativity. It's definitely one to, you know, even if you don't follow it religiously, to work through and look at the different exercises. There are things like going on a date with yourself, and, you know, ways to reconnect with the way that you create art and put it out there in the world. And it's all about writing. It's a really good book. It's definitely was a seminal book, wasn't it, of its time?
It certainly was. It certainly was. And it really did highlight the fact that creativity is so important for us all. We're creative beings, aren't we?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely we are. And I think we've lost a lot of that that way of being because it feels silly. You know, an element of it just feels silly. It feels, you know, it doesn't feel important, in inverted commas, you know, whatever that means. It feels like the more important things. And I'm not in any way saying, you know, a lot of people haven't got enough money. There's a lot of food banks. There's a lot of very, very difficult things happening. So, of course, those things, living needs to be prioritized at that stage. But at the same time, a lot of us, myself included, when we're tired at the end of the day, we just put the telly on. So we haven't got any headspace left. We haven't got any bandwidth left to create. But actually slowly trying to habit stack to just say, you know, I'm not going to write. I'm not going to say I'm going to write for an hour a day. I'm going to set an alarm when I get home, cup of tea, and I'm going to write for 20 minutes. No more, no less. No more is key as well. So that's all I do, you know, 20 minutes and I write and then that's it. And it's that sort of habit stacking that can really help get back into the process of creating and writing.
Yeah, consistency is really important. But yeah, you're right about the no more being really important as well, because you don't want it to become a chore and you don't want it to become something that eats into the rest of the day. It needs to be something that you have fun with.
Right. You don't want to resent it, right, as well.
Exactly.
It's taken suddenly you're like, oh, I was writing for 2 hours. Now I've got to walk the dog and I've got to do, you know, all those things. You know, it's really about kind of, certainly at the start of revisiting creativity, it really is about just being comfortable with getting back in that place and remembering, you know, it's not that important. And I mean that with love. In that it's important for us inside, but it doesn't matter if what you write is rubbish. It doesn't matter. It's just a story. So actually, we do need to have a word with our egos sometimes as well and just sort of say, you know, oh, I wrote something rubbish. So?
Yes.
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter.
Yeah. Yeah, it doesn't. And I learned that over the years, and certainly with art, drawing things. Actually, you see my trust your magic elephant behind me here.
Noticing that.
It's not mine, but a friend of mine who actually does art classes called drawing it out. In other words, bringing out your emotions and, you know, everything onto the page. But trust your magic, I think, is a good one. But no, I mean, I'm looking at something that I've framed and got on my wall now. I've no idea what it is or what it means, but I did it in a fit of creativity one day. and I thought, it's quite decorative. I'll put it up there.
Right.
And it doesn't really matter. And I used all sorts of different things to create it. Just as my elephant behind me he's painted with coffee and all sorts of things. Anything that came to hand. But so it is a question of just getting out of your way as well, and just saying, you know, it doesn't really matter, and not feeling that you're going to be judged. Well, some people might judge you, but what, you know. So what?
If they're judging you, then they're not your people. Do you know? And that's the key thing. They're not your people. So let them do their thing. And I think, you know, in a world where we are so at the moment broken into camps, you know, there's so much different types of people, and there's a lot of antagonistic stuff in the media around groups and all of the stuff, and there is so much divide at the moment that actually art and sharing a piece of art with someone can really bring us together. You know, it's an amazing thing, especially in theatre. You know, there's nothing like a theatrical experience. There's nothing like going to see an amazing play and being there with a group of people, you know, that you'll never speak to them, but you've all shared the same and yet a different experience. And in a world where we're all attached to our mobile phones, we're all doing so much individually, that actually that communal experience has been lost, I think, quite a lot.
Yes, and there is something very special about the theatre. So the theatre, to me, is a very different experience to going to the cinema.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And I had a really good conversation actually of what can theatre, on a course recently, what can theatre do that other forms can't, which was really interesting because we were a bit stumped. We all playwrights and all know about it in ourselves, all know in our heart and our soul what we love about it, but to articulate that was really difficult. I don't think we came up with the perfect answer, but we were saying, you know, it's about immediacy. And I think there's something about the humanity in theatre. The fact that it can go wrong is really, really, there's a jeopardy to it, which is obviously adds to the drama, but there's a humanity to it. You know, someone can fall over, they can forget their lines, these things. Whereas if you've created a piece of art and then it's in a gallery, it's finished. Whereas, and a piece of a film as well is finished. Theatre is alive and kicking. And, you know, you can go there and watch something or be a part of something or write something and see something that you've written performed and think, oh, my gosh, like, we don't quite know what's going to happen. And sometimes, you know, when I was an actor, I was on stage and the lights all went out. And
Great.
we just kept talking. We were doing a PG Woodhouse play. You know, feathers in our hair and all of that. And me and the guy who were in a car, the other actor at the time, we just kept doing the scene, you know, jolly hockey sticks and all of that stuff, the way we're talking. And then suddenly the stage manager stepped in and said, hi, everyone. You know, we've unfortunately had a power cut. But, you know, as actors, you're just like, just keep going, just keep telling the story no matter what, even though it's in the dark. But the beautiful thing about those moments when you do have a piece that goes wrong is that actually the audience was so on board once it's gone wrong. You know, it's like they're the best audiences, because when someone's, you know, potentially had a little trip or forgotten a line or something and had to come out of character for some reason, you come back on stage after the reset and the audience is just so on board because it was alive and they witnessed the humanity of that story. And
there's an energy. You know, absolutely. The whole theatre is filled with a certain energy, which you don't get when you're. It's seeing a film or watching a film is a bit like looking at a piece of art on a wall.
Yeah,
it's 2D, and it's, you know, you're not in that immediate energy of the performers, and so there's a certain lack. Although, don't get me wrong, I love cinema, and I really love the art form, but it's different.
It is different. Yeah, it definitely is. And I think a lot of, you know, theatre is expensive to make. It is
expensive to go to as well. Yeah.
Expensive to go to, you know. Luckily now there are good schemes around, and there are things, you know, that I would urge anyone that's listening to this that's thinking, oh, it's all very well, you know, I can't afford to go to the theatre. I totally get that. But there are some really good ways to watch theatre, and that's some of that, you know, ironically, after what we're talking about, is watching at home.
Yes.
So the National Theatre at Home is, I think it's £10 a month. Amazing stuff that you can see on there, and there's loads of different theatre at home options now. Especially if you want to study craft, if you're interested and you think, you're listening to this thinking, oh, you know, I did have an idea for a story, it's worth just watching some of those from your sofa and thinking, what was good about this play? Like, what was it? What makes me feel, what made me feel, actually, is the end of the question when I was watching this. What were the bits that were interesting? What bits did I enjoy? Just to start getting that part of your brain working, because I think often, if you're not in the world of stories, sometimes you can watch something passively, which is great because you're just enjoying it. But if you want to start getting into doing a little bit of writing, then watching and noting what works for you is a really good way to start.
You know, sometimes, though, I know that if you are editing things together and, you know, putting, YouTube videos together, not these are very simple, but, you know, you have to think about, well, where do you do the edit? What works where, and how does that go together? And in fact, I was showing a friend of mine some time ago, years ago, and he said, you've ruined watching anything on television for me now.
Oh,
So I'm just looking at how they're editing it.
absolutely. And I was speaking to someone the other day actually about how going to the theatre with me isn't that much fun, because I will to just be honest, I come out the interval and I'm pretty much analysing everything. So on both ends, I will come out of a show and be like, oh my God, did you notice how they did that? And that was amazing, and that was brilliant, and what a beautiful piece of suspense. And equally, if I think something hasn't worked, I'll say, I don't know what the director was thinking. So I'm definitely in that space as well. I think you can't turn it off once you've turned it on.
You can't. Once you've seen it, you can't unsee it, right?
Exactly, like so many things.
But let's get back to the mental health issue here. You help people who are suffering from burnout, and who and all of that, I think, is down to I've suffered from it myself, and I think a lot of the time it's because you're not doing really what you are cut out to do, and you're forcing yourself into this very narrow bandwidth of creativity or lack of. And so you help people who have gone through that to really come out of themselves. And what do you think about AI, artificial intelligence? Is that helpful at all?
I think AI, there's a lot of fear around AI, and I understand that in the artistic world. I completely understand that, this idea that we'll be replaced and that side of things. And I think, who knows where it's going to go? It might be that AI can write the most amazing play, in a few years' time, that you won't be able to tell whether it's written by a human or written by. At the moment, you can. If you plug in, you can tell. But it might be that down the line you can't. And if and when that happens, I probably think when that happens, actually, it will be even more important, the process of writing, the process of creating.
Yeah.
Because what happens out there and writing something on the page and telling that story with AI is one thing. But actually, I know firsthand, I've written plays, and I've written plays about some really difficult things that I experienced in my life. And actually, the process, the healing process of that writing, and of that then seeing a play performed, is such that can't be replicated by any computer, by any robot, because actually that healing itself is so profound. But it must be in the right hands. And actually, that's really, really key, that if anyone is listening to this thinking, I've got a big topic that actually has affected me very deeply, and I want so much to write a story about it, whether that's a novel, whether that's a play, whatever it might be. But actually, having the right support around, and understanding of the fact that creativity is a beautiful thing, and of course you can write on your own. You can write, people write for years and years, write novels on their own. But actually, if it's something that you're feeling nervous about writing, and you're not sure whether you can touch those places on your own, then having a mentor, having someone to support you, to say, for example, I know you were going to finish this act by this date, but it didn't happen. So I'm just wondering what's happened there, really asking the person, and really understanding that these are sensitive issues that will invariably come up. And often when I work with writers, first of all, they don't on a level know what it's about. They don't necessarily know that it's about their stuff. And I know that when I started writing things as well before, I've been thinking before, I'm going to write a comedy. And of course, all the stuff trenches up and you're like, oh no, it's not a comedy at all. But these things, the story will find a way. So if you have something that you want to get out and tell a story, it will find a way. And having the support with your mental health as you do that, so that you don't feel like having a cheerleader, first of all, because it's brilliant to have a cheerleader to keep you on track, to keep you accountable, to help you with the nuts and bolts of how to write it, but also to understand the writing process. There's a catharsis to it, and you're getting stuff out. And to have support from a mentor, and from someone else helping you with that is really beneficial.
Yes,
Yeah.
and of course, be careful if you're going to publish something about characters and real life scenarios. We've seen recently how that can backfire a little bit.
Quite. And I think that's really important. And that's one of the things that we do at PowerPlay. We will say, like, I will say with clients, like, are you comfortable with this? Would they be comfortable? Do you care if they aren't? These are really key questions. Like, what will the knock-on effect be of this? Will people recognize themselves? And think about that, because actually a lot of damage can be done if you don't think quite deeply to yourself, and to other people. If you don't think quite deeply about where you position people in a play.
Yeah. Yes. And then talking about writing, there's something really quite powerful about actually physically putting pen to paper or pencil to paper, isn't there? Writing on a computer is fine, but there's something actually quite powerful about that connection between your mind, your creative mind, and the physical written word.
Absolutely. And it's interesting, I've got a little boy, and they do a lot on iPads at the school, which I'm a bit like, oh, I understand why they do it, and I need to just get over the fact that we're from different eras. But at the same time, I'm like, oh, I just want, I don't want that to be the default, like, because I do, as you say, there's something about a physical thing you can hold that you have marked. And it's as simple as that. It's you on something, and it's physical. And even one of the exercises I sometimes do with writers is get them to write something, again, that might be quite personal to them. If they're very, very self-critical as well, is getting them to write something and then ripping it up, or burning it if they can do it safely.
Yeah.
And actually, again, that's a process of creation and then dissolving something. And it's led by the writer, and it's something that you have control over. We don't have a lot of control over a lot of things now, or even if we do, certainly a lot of us don't feel like we have a lot of control over things. A simple act of putting pen to paper, of creating art, is control. You have some control over what you do there. Now, what you choose to do with it afterwards is up to you. But the motion of movement as you tell your story, I think is really key. And of course, it depends on if you have neurodiversity and dyslexia and issues like that. And of course, it's different for everyone. There's some great tools out there for people who are neurodivergent, and I am neurodivergent, so I understand all of those things. But I think, as you say, there is something about seeing your words on paper that is just, it's a beautiful thing.
Yes, and it's. I mean, I'm not saying that AI isn't, useful or a good thing. In fact, a friend of mine's son, young lad, he's 9, is very good at creating things with AI. But pictures with AI, they're so creative, they're so fantastic, and that is a really great avenue for your creativity. But so I guess there are different levels.
Yeah, absolutely.
Get that out there.
I think so. And I think AI can be really useful in things like research, and really useful to just think, I want to write a play set in the 70s in Ireland, but I wasn't alive at that time. So tell me some things about what was going on, and actually you can get some really useful starting points, I think, from AI. It's not necessarily going to be the finished product.
Yeah. And then neurodivergence, you say that, you mentioned that, and you said that you were neurodivergent yourself.
Yes.
How does writing, or being creative with writing, how does that manifest, or how does that help anybody who, in fact, the spectrum is so huge in terms of neurodivergence. So I can't say that word this morning, but neurodivergence. But how does that impact somebody who is neurodivergent?
So I'm late diagnosed autistic. So I was diagnosed as autistic 2 years ago-ish now. And it's been a really useful diagnosis for me, partly because I think I have always been creative, but I've also found the real world really difficult, which is probably why I've immersed myself so much in story. Story is a way to escape from the real world. And it's such a brilliant tool for anyone, but particularly for people that are neurodivergent, particularly for people that actually, it's a real struggle to do the masking thing. It's a real struggle. They end up, you go to a meeting, at the end of the meeting, you just need to sleep. Like, it's a lot. And actually, I think back to my time at drama school, which is 20 years ago now, when I was at Lambda. And I think back to the students and I think, my gosh, I think so many of us, when you're neurodivergent, we just didn't know it was a different time.
Wow.
And actually, so many of my friends who are creative are neurodivergent. And I think for those of us that are having creativity in our life is not really, it's not really a negotiable. You have to use creativity in order to express those frustrations and difficulties with trying to fit in with the neurotypical world. And I think that's one of the most beautiful things about being neurodivergent. There's lots of challenges, but actually being able to create art, and that being really one of your first languages is really it's such an asset. So I would sort of celebrate anyone who thinks they might be neurodivergent or who is neurodivergent, listening to this. Just lean into that part of yourself, even though it's not necessarily the one that's going to get you loads of money or the one that's going to make you famous. Like, try to lean in. And I have to teach I have to remind myself of this a lot, because, I'm running a business and doing all of those things. And actually, sometimes I'll think, actually written anything this week? Oh God, I've got to do it. I've got to take a leaf out of my own book. So really, just using creativity as a way to express some of those difficult, big feelings. I heard someone recently talk about autism. It may have been ADHD as well, but particularly anyone who's got who is neurodivergent in some form, that we operate on energy first. So, being in a room and there's tensions, or, you pick it straight away, and you're reading, particularly for me, micro movements in people's faces and all of that stuff, those energies that you're picking up. And that can be a brilliant asset, but it can be really, really tiring. So putting it down on paper is a great way to calm the nervous system when it's elevated.
That's really interesting. Yeah. And how much is that being recognized now by healthcare professionals, let's say, maybe in the National Health Service or elsewhere?
Yeah, that's a good question. And I don't know straight away is the answer to that, in that I don't work in the NHS, but I know that schools, from second-hand experience from my son, are definitely leaning more into creativity for people that are, challenged in that way. I think there is things like art therapy. I know that NHS has got those initiatives throughout the country, but I think it's on a trust by trust basis. It's not kind of consistent. And so I think it really is up to the individual to, try to take, of course, it would be lovely if that was available for us on the NHS, if it was available for us, but actually the NHS is so stretched, and really it's about trying to think, okay, can I give it a go myself, or can I get someone to support me to give it a go?
Yeah. But just picking up a pad and a pen or a pencil and writing something down every day, you reckon that's a good start?
It's a great start. And I wouldn't even pressurize yourself to be every day. Do you know, like, I know, when you've got a kid, when you're working, all of that stuff, just even if you say like once every 3 days, but put it in your diary, book it in, because that time will be taken otherwise. It's a non-negotiable time, as long as everyone else is safe. And I also would say, a lot of the time when we do have caring responsibilities, or we feel like, particularly those of us socialized as female, will feel as if we're needed maybe a bit more than we are. So, I must be the one to do that. I must be the one to sort the house, or must be the one to take the kids, or must be the one, whatever it might be. But actually ask if someone else can do that for you, whether that's a friend or whether that's a partner. and that you can carve out some time for yourself and stick to that time. You know, make it important, because it is important. Your mental health and your creativity is important. It's not valued in the same way that other things are valued in our society.
Yes, and creativity, it comes in many different forms. And I had an aha moment last night. I was thinking about, speaking with you today, and I was scheduling a load of social media posts, and I was really enjoying it. I thought, why am I enjoying this suddenly? Mm-hmm. And it was because I was being creative. Because what I had done a few days back last week, is I'd gone on a walk. It was only about 1.5 miles, and I started taking pictures of all the wild plants, the flowers that I was seeing along the way. And I recognized a lot of them as herbal, flowers, herbs, medicinal plants, edible plants. And I thought, well, I'll just see how many are in this. I think it was 1.5 miles there, so 3-mile walk. And I think I got 20 odd something. And I thought, if I could post one of these a day and talk about them, right? So I've started doing that. I've been doing that for the last week, and I scheduled another week's worth last night. But the fun part, I mean, apart from taking the pictures, the fun part was editing, cropping the pictures, just not editing them, so that you didn't recognize them, but just, thinking, I'll just take that bit of the frame and I'll put that. It was great fun.
Yeah, of course. And as you say, creativity can be found in so many different ways. It may be that you're not necessarily a writer, but maybe you love design, or maybe you love art, or maybe you love doodling. Do you know, it doesn't have to be highbrow. It doesn't have to be that you're great at something. It's actually just a way, poetry is really good as well. Just giving yourself sometimes, restrictions can be really useful to sort of say, I'm going to write a haiku a day.
Oh, yeah. Or, I like writing haikus. They're great.
They're great, aren't they? They're really good. They're a really good challenge. And actually, something like that's fun and playful, because we often forget how to play. And that's one of the things that we do, as well. Obviously, at PowerPlay, we work with people that want to write plays, but we also go into businesses to bring theatre into the business world as well. So often you'll have, talk about burnout and things like that, but often you'll have things like company values now, like that's a big thing. What are our company values? How do we behave? And I've worked in HR as well, so I've seen it all from that side. But actually, a lot of those values are really dry, and they don't really come to life because people just see them and they're in the staff handbook, and, they're not necessarily, oh, great, okay, I need to be kind, or I need to be whatever. They just feel sort of like a nebulous concept. But actually at PowerPlay, we come into businesses and we shake it up and say, okay, what does this mean at your company? Like, let's tell a story. Let's try and get this going and make it resonate with you on a deeper level, because those values don't mean anything unless we can feel them. Do you know? Absolutely. Unless we can't live them unless we can feel them.
Yeah.
So that is really important as well when you think about, yes, of course, there's the one-to-one work in writing plays, but actually as a collective, what can writing together do? And that's something that we've just launched PowerPlay in business, so it's a new part of the company. But actually, it's really exciting to be able to go in and talk to people and get them to start getting that creativity in the workplace. And people who would always say I'm not creative, suddenly they, the more comfortable they get and the more able to see that story is everywhere, that actually they can bring something that feels unique and not dry, because let's face it, a lot of work can just feel a bit dead.
Yes. And those values, companies will put the values down on a card and hand them out to all their employees, and you're expected to then just understand and get that and live, work by those values, but they're just on a piece of card.
Exactly. And no one really knows what they mean. And also a lot of the time they're so generic and they're not applicable to that individual company, because they don't feel relatable at all. So, if you say be kind, and obviously that's a phrase that has been bandied around a lot, but I don't know what that means. And it's like, what? And so when we go into companies, we will have conversations, first of all, with HR teams and, you know, managers, if relevant, or senior leadership, and say, like, what do you mean by this? Like, can we dig into this a bit? And then from there, with the team, write the story of the values and see actors perform the story of the values and bring it to life a bit. Because look, we're all sick of PowerPoints, right? Like, we're all sick of that, you know, especially post-COVID, all of the constant Zoom meetings, and let's bring a bit of life into life.
Couldn't agree with you more on that one. Absolutely. Well, Amy, listen, we're coming to the end now. It's been fantastic talking with you about all of this. It's really important, I think. And, you know, do tell us where people can find out more about you and your work.
Absolutely. So, thank you, first of all. It's been great to talk to you and to be on the show. So you can find me on www.writeyourpowerplay.com and on Instagram at writeyourpowerplay, and TikTok on writeyourpowerplay as well. Also, if you are going to be in Edinburgh towards the end of August, I'm going to be running a workshop and I'm going to have a stall as well at the Edinburgh Festival. So if you are there, please follow me on socials, and hopefully we'll be able to, you know, meet and maybe come along to the workshop and learn a little bit more about how to write your first play.
Oh, fab. I might pop across the water and see you then.
Perfect.
That's fantastic. Well, thank you so much, as I say. And thank you, everybody who's watching this on YouTube. If you like this kind of content, please do all the YouTubey things like liking, subscribing, and then sharing this video so that other people can see it as well. But for now, from me and from Amy Ewbank, goodbye for now. See you on the next one.
Thank you.